You will own nothing and you will be happy. We've all heard the quote. It's the favorite line of every conspiracy theorist on the internet. They tell you it's a secret plot, hatched in a smoke-filled room in Davos by a cabal of elites who want to steal your property. But I'm here to tell you something much scarier. It isn't a conspiracy, it is a business model. And it isn't being driven by a secret cabal, it is being driven by a spreadsheet. We are currently living through a fundamental rewriting of the economic operating system. We are shifting from an economy of production, where you make money by creating new things, to an economy of extraction, where you make money by charging people rent on what already exists. The math is brutal, and the goal is simple: to turn every single aspect of your life, from the roof over your head to the heated seats in your car, into a subscription service. This is the story of the Rentier State. And if you look at the numbers, you'll see why the middle class isn't just struggling, it is being systematically deleted. To understand what is happening to your money, you have to understand the difference between an entrepreneur and a rentier. In the 20th century, the hero of capitalism was the entrepreneur. They built a factory, made a product, and sold it to you. You paid them money, they gave you the item, and you owned it. Transaction over. But in the 21st century, the hero of Wall Street is the rentier. The rentier doesn't want to sell you anything. In fact, selling you the product is a failure, because if you own it, you stop paying for it. The rentier wants to control a scarce asset, a house, a patent, a software platform, a pipeline, and charge you a toll every time you use it. Why did this shift happen? Because Wall Street loves recurring revenue. If a company sells you a widget for $100 once, that's risky. You might not come back. But if they charge you $10 a month forever, that is safe. It is predictable. And here's the kicker. Wall Street values that subscription dollar 10 to 20 times higher than the one-time sales dollar. This created a fiduciary duty for every CEO in America to destroy ownership. If they let you own the product, they are destroying shareholder value. They must turn you into a tenant. So how did this go from a corporate strategy to a global economic reality? You have to look at the wreckage of 2008. When the housing market collapsed, millions of Americans lost their homes. It was a tragedy for families. But for Wall Street, it was the fire sale of the century. At the same time, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates to zero. This was ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. Suddenly, money was free for the banks. But traditional investments, like government bonds, paid nothing. So, trillions of dollars of global capital, pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds went hunting for yield. They needed something safe that paid a monthly return. They found two things: your software and your house. They realized that a rental house is basically a bond. You put a tenant in, they pay a coupon every month called rent, and the asset value goes up. This birthed the institutional landlord. Before 2010, no single entity owned more than 1,000 homes. It was a mom and pop industry. Today, corporate giants own tens of thousands of single-family homes, managing them with algorithms that maximize rent extraction. They use the free money from the Fed to outbid American families, paying all cash for starter homes and then rented them back to the very people they outbid. The blueprint for this wasn't real estate, though. It was tech. Remember when you used to buy Microsoft Office or Photoshop? You paid a few $100, you got a disk, and you owned it forever. I know people still running Photoshop CS6 from 2012. That model is dead. Adobe and Microsoft pioneered SaaS, software as a service. Now you pay $20 or $50 a month. Forever. Do the math. Over 5 years, that $500 software now costs you $1,200. And if you stop paying, you lose everything: your tools, your files, your access. This is called lock-in, and it is the holy grail of the rentier state. This model was so profitable that it infected the physical world. We are now seeing features as a service. Look at BMW. They tried to charge a monthly subscription for heated seats. The hardware was already in the car. You bought the car. But you had to pay rent to turn it on. Look at HP printers. If you stop paying your ink subscription, the printer, which sits on your desk, stops working. It effectively bricks itself. This is a violation of the most basic concept of property rights. You possess the object, but you do not own the functionality. You are a tenant in your own car. This leads us to what author Cory Doctorow calls Chokepoint Capitalism. The goal is to create a bottleneck that you cannot avoid. Take John Deere. A farmer buys a $500,000 tractor. But John Deere uses software locks to prevent that farmer from repairing it. If the tractor breaks, the farmer cannot fix it with a wrench. They have to pay an authorized dealer to come out and unlock the software. The farmer owns the metal, but John Deere owns the brain. Or look at Apple. The App Store is a digital fiefdom. If you want to sell an app to an iPhone user, you have to pay Apple a 30% tax. That isn't a fee for service, it is a rent payment for access to their land. This is creating a system that economists call techno-feudalism. You have the lords who own the platforms and the land, and you have the serfs who do the work, take the risk, and pay a tithe for the privilege of existing in the marketplace. Now, the defenders of this system will tell you, this is just the free market, supply and demand. That is a lie, and we know it's a lie because of Singapore. Singapore is one of the most capitalist, free market places on earth. It is an island with almost no land. By all logic, it should be a rentier's paradise with the highest housing costs in the world. But in Singapore, the homeownership rate is nearly 90%. How? Because the government decided that housing was a utility for stability, not a casino for speculation. The Singaporean state builds high-quality housing and sells 99-year leases to its citizens. They use a forced savings model called the CPF to ensure that almost every working person can afford to buy their flat. They treat housing as an asset for the people, not a yield vehicle for a hedge fund. The result? The median wealth per adult in Singapore is $100,000 higher than in the United States. Let that sink in. The land of the free has created a permanent renter class, while the tiny island of Singapore created a nation of owners. It proves that the rentier state isn't inevitable. It is a policy choice. Let's look at the specific math that is crushing the American dream. If you feel like you're working harder but falling further behind, you aren't crazy. You're just looking at the data. Since 1980, the median home price has exploded by over 500%, while median household income has only grown by about 380%. But the real killer is the down payment. In 1980, saving 20% for a house cost about 75% of a year's salary. It was hard, but doable. Today, saving 20% requires nearly 125% of a year's gross income for the average family. Mathematically, you cannot save your way to ownership when the asset price is inflating faster than your wages, and while you're trying to save, you are bleeding death by 1,000 cuts. The average millennial spends 38% more on subscriptions than a boomer. Streaming services, software, clouds, meal kits. This is subscription creep. It siphons off the capital that used to go into savings and redirects it into the quarterly earnings reports of the S&P 500. So who benefits? Why is the system rigged this way? Follow the tax code. In America, we tax labor, the work you do, at the highest rates. But we tax capital gains and carried interest at much lower rates. If you go to work and earn a salary, you pay top dollar. But if a private equity manager buys a neighborhood of houses and collects rent, they pay significantly less in taxes thanks to loopholes like carried interest and depreciation. That's right, a corporate landlord can claim their houses are depreciating, losing value for tax purposes, even while those houses are doubling in market value. They get a tax break for getting richer. The system is subsidizing the rentier. And look at the lobbying. The National Rental Home Council represents these giant corporate landlords. They spend millions fighting right to repair laws, fighting rent control, and fighting anything that would make it easier for you to own rather than rent. In Q3 of 2025 alone, Invitation Homes saw their net income jump over 43%. That profit came directly from the pockets of people who can't afford to buy. We need to be clear about where this leads. If we do not change trajectory, we are heading toward a society where the middle class owns nothing. You will rent your house from Blackstone. You will rent your car functionality from BMW. You will rent your software from Microsoft. And you will pay for it all with data harvested by Amazon. This creates a class system that is impossible to break. If you don't own assets, you cannot pass wealth to your children. You cannot weather a financial storm. You are fragile. Ownership is not just about money. It is about autonomy. It is about the ability to say no. When you own your home, you have sanctuary. When you own your tools, you have independence. The rentier state wants to turn you into a user, a dependent, a source of recurring revenue. The quote, "you will own nothing," wasn't a threat. It was a sales pitch. And right now, we are all buying it. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Thanks for watching.